America's best days are yet to come. That's because conservatives like you know and live the values our great country was built on. The Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard in the D.C. swamp each day, shining the light on a bright future. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values and won't give up the fight because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
President Trump says ISIS has been viciously killing primarily Christians in Nigeria, and he says there will be many more dead terrorists if the murders continue. So the president announcing the strikes on Truth Social last night, saying in part, quote, "Our country will not allow radical Islamic terrorism to prosper."
Was not a Merry Christmas for ISIS in Nigeria. Not a Merry Christmas for that. I hope it was a very Merry Christmas for you and your family, though. I'm absolutely blessed. Wonderful family. The best wife. I always call her the best wife ever. And I really do believe that. Blessed beyond belief that way. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin. And it is truly an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. Always is. And one of the things that's so remarkable about this president, if you were to think of adjectives to describe President Trump, you can come up with a lot of stuff, right? No shortage of material there. One descriptor that nobody, including his biggest supporters, would ever think about would be understated, right? President Trump is a lot of things. You're not going to have people saying, Trump is understated. But guess what? He is. He is entirely understated. His success is understated. Even among his supporters, what he accomplishes is understated. And actually, what Trump did on Christmas Day by ordering those strikes and taking out ISIS terrorists that have been persecuting Christians in Nigeria, it's endemic of what the man does, which is never stop working for you. Never stops working for. That's what he was doing on Christmas. What were you doing yesterday? I mean, again, hopefully enjoying a wonderful Christmas with your family. But Trump, yeah, he had that going on. But also, we're going to take out the ISIS terrorists. And, oh, by the way, we're working on the pressure campaign against Maduro in Venezuela and some other things that he was doing during the course of the Christmas festivities yesterday. And it actually reminded me of last year. Reminded me a lot of last year. Because one of the things that I was thinking about is that the man never took a day off. If you remember all the way back, and I remember we had a conversation on the show a year ago today, the 26th of 24 last year. And I was talking about how the man didn't even take Christmas off. From the day he won the election last year, straight through Christmas Day at that point, the man was working because he wanted to accomplish his agenda. And he's yet to take a day off. The man still is not taking a day off. Didn't take Christmas off this year either. Doing the work that needs to be done around the world. All part of truly making America great again. And so one of the things I have been working on over the past few days, the receipts, the Trump receipts. And I do this for a living. If you're familiar with me, then you know that I will talk about there being two sides to the story, one side of facts. I'm very fact-based. I'm analytics-based. I'm research-based. All the stuff that I deliver to you. And given that it's what I do for a living, there shouldn't be many surprises. When I was researching the Trump agenda and the Trump receipts, what the man has actually accomplished all throughout the course of this year, where we are right now, what's coming next, there are a lot of like, holy crap moments for me. There are a lot of things that I knew, but I'd basically forgotten about. There are other things I'm like, holy crap, he was that successful in this issue? So I've got a show for you that I think in a lot of respects, even if you are a news junkie, even if you are a Trump supporter, even if you have been paying attention to what's been in the news during this holiday week, it's going to surprise you. I guarantee you I'm going to have a lot during the course of this show. It's going to surprise you. So let's get into it. What I was thinking about as I was putting this together, my opening monologue for this year. In my show, The Brian Mudd Show, which, by the way, my home station, WJNO in West Palm Beach, not too far from where El Presidente is right now in Mar-a-Lago. You can catch the Brian Mudd Show podcast wherever you get your podcasts, at Brian Mudd Radio socially. But anyway, on my show, I do a monologue called My Top 3 Takeaways each day. And the theme of my top 3 takeaways for the new year in 2025, making America great again. And I went back to it as I was taking a look at the receipts for Trump. I went back to his plan. I went back to what I laid out in my expectations. And so I'm going to start by just rolling you through my opening monologue from this year. And I'm going to fill in so many of these blanks as we get into the show. But just, you can think through this with me and what comes to mind. I started out by saying that this is our year. My top takeaway for 2025 was this is our year. And this is our time. And if you've waited for much of your life hoping for fundamental changes within the way that our federal government operates, as in having less of it intruding into your life, this is your year. You can think about there are things that come to mind here. The less federal government being in your way this year, if you feel like that's the case. Again, I'm going to come back with facts, with the receipts on these things. But you can just think through this with me right now. If you've been waiting for the death of political correctness and wokeness, this is your year. If you've been waiting for a time in which the godless, soulless, and slanderous legacy news media would become irrelevant, this is your year. And I said, actually, based upon the previous November's election results, last year was that year. But you probably went through most of it frustrated and worried by the extent of the dishonest reporting that took place. But I mentioned that now you're able to enter this year knowing that your godless, soulless, and slanderous legacy news media is largely irrelevant. Again, you can think through this with me. How many changes have we had in legacy news media? And we'll get specific here in just a bit. If you've wanted the rule of law to be upheld, this is your year. If you've wanted equal justice under the law, this is your year. If you've wanted to seal the border, stop the migrant invasion, this is your year. If you've wanted the largest deportation operation in American history to remove the record number of illegal immigrants from this country, this is your year. If you've wanted an end to high inflation and for life to become more affordable again, well, this is your year. If you've wanted to take advantage of U.S. energy resources as opposed to being reliant on foreign sources of energy, well, this happens to be your year. If you've wanted American companies to return manufacturing to the U.S. instead of relying on countries like China, this is your year. If you've wanted lower taxes, including an end to taxes on tips, taxes on overtime, taxes on Social Security, this is your year. Again, you can think through with me on these things about what's happened. These were expectations coming into this year that I laid out. And you can just mentally begin to fill in the blanks as we walk. We're not very far into what Trump has accomplished here. And again, I'm going to get very specific on these things as well. If you've wanted a president who will defend our Constitution and our constitutional rights, yeah, this is your year. If you've wanted an end to foreign wars and conflicts that entangle and are often paid for by who? By us, the U.S. This is your year. If you've wanted an end to the weaponization of the federal government against select groups of people, this is your year. If you've wanted an end to the migrant crime and drug epidemic, this is your year. If you've wanted to see safety restored to large cities, this is your year. If you've wanted to see our military rebuilt without wokeness, this is your year. If you've wanted to see the integrity of the U.S. dollar preserved around the world, this is your year. If you've wanted to see Medicare and Social Security strengthened so that they're not soon insolvent, this is your year. If you've wanted an end to federal regulations that limit consumer choice, that drive up prices, this is your year. If you want reform in education, including the end of funding critical race theory, gender fluidity, and woke agendas, homosexual alphabet kind of material there, and all through the U.S. Department of Education, this is your year. And I said, in fact, if you want the end of the U.S. Department of Education altogether, this may be your year, fingers crossed. Again, we're going to get to the receipts on all this. A lot of this you just kind of know intellectually, though. You can piece together things that have happened during the course of this year that Trump has accomplished that's made this go. If you want an end to boys pretending to be girls and playing their sports, this is your year. If you've wanted an end to anti-Semitism and related hate being tolerated on college campuses, this is your year. If you want greater federal election integrity measures, this is your year. And if you want the United States to become more prosperous and successful than ever before, this is your year. Now, why is it that I cited all of those things? What was all of that stuff? It happened to be derived directly from Donald Trump's 20-point plan for making America great again. What he actually ran on. There's just the stuff he ran on. And I mentioned to start this year that I thought he was dead set on making all of it a reality. Because I had never in my life seen a president-elect work harder than Donald Trump, who was working on Christmas Day last year. Never had seen a president-elect work harder than Donald Trump since he had won that election. The man literally worked every single day, including working on Christmas Day. And it was because he realized just how incredibly important every day was going to be if he was going to be successful in carrying out the ambitious Make America Great Again agenda, if he really was going to accomplish it. So we're getting warmed up. We're going to begin to break down the rest of what comes together in his plan, the execution against it, and receipts that, again, are going to blow your mind. That's coming up. Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
New York City Metro included in a warning for the first time in almost 4 years, but now all the way back to the Poconos, up to the capital region of New York, and back west to Syracuse. Icing that's happening across western into central parts of PA.
Yeah, so if you're in the Northeast, sympathies, as you do have the brutal winter storm that is making its way. And then if you're like in L.A., you got the flood situation there. So many folks in a bad way there. So lots of post-Christmas weather issues out there. The flight information, by the way, take a look at the latest. That was Fox Weather's Ian Oliver reporting there, by the way. JFK, hardest hit airport by far today. There are now, where we stand, just about 6,800 delays at airports across the country that have happened today. And we are now up to 1,560 cancellations in the U.S. So it is rough. Definitely one of those deals where if you are flying, you want to be aware. If you're driving anywhere that's going to be near the Northeast, you definitely need to be mindful of that situation. So very fortunate on my end. My wonderful and talented wife, Ashley, and I were able to navigate very easily, actually, 2 different trips during the course of this week. Got timed things out very well, including this morning, making my way back to the east coast of Florida from the west coast of Florida. My parents happen to be in Naples. Again, wish you and your family a wonderful holiday season. Hope you had a very Merry Christmas. And it is Brian Muddy in for Mark Levin. I'm taking a look at what Trump has accomplished and where this is going heading into next year. And putting the pieces together, putting the receipts, the facts together, just kind of blew my mind. I know it's going to for yours. What I have done here at the onset, went back to where this year started, what my expectations were based upon what Trump's expectations were. And you think back to where this year started and how ambitious the Trump agenda is. And then you start taking a look at it and you're like, holy crap, the man actually accomplished something against every one of his objectives this year. In many cases, accomplished more than we could have imagined with many of those. And one of the things that I laid out after just kind of rhetorically working my way through what Trump had promised coming into this year, I mentioned that for many of us, the incoming Trump administration would bring with it the promises that we've waited most of our lives to see happen. And most importantly, maybe, unlike the first time that he took office, when he was just trying to figure things out and spent a lot of time in his administration surrounded by the wrong people and all that, he had intended, and it proved to be true, that his administration would be fully operational by 2 p.m. on January 20th. And you start taking a look at everything that ultimately was accomplished by President Trump, starting with day one. The success that the man had out of the jump, the success that he's had as recently as today, is unlike anything we have ever seen. Again, I'm going to bring you the facts about all these things, including rolling through that 20-point plan with Trump. That is coming up next, along with your calls. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin.
We're coming upon the 250th birthday of the United States, and it has me thinking, what will America look like 250 years from now? My friends at the Heritage Foundation want to know what you think. What policies should America prioritize? What principles should carry us into the decades ahead? As America enters a new golden age, Heritage recognizes that this is the time to take stock and to be intentional about how we shape the future of America. And they can't do it without your input. So please go to heritage.org/LEVIN and let them know what you think is important. Without patriots like you stepping up and speaking up for what you believe in, America as we know it can't survive for another 250 years. Please go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin. Take the survey on America's future. This survey takes less than 10 minutes to complete, but it is critical for making sure that the America we pass on to future generations is an America we're proud of. Go to heritage.org/Levin today. That's heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
If you're trying to reach Mark on the air, call him at 877-381-3811. The Mark Levin Radio Show continues.
The LA County Fire Department rescued more than 100 people who were trapped due to the storms. They used a helicopter to hoist at least 21 people from cars, and at least 20 others were pulled out of vehicles by crews on the ground in this area.
Yeah, so the snow and ice storm in the Northeast, you've got the floods in L.A. I mean, a weird thing. You talk about a place that basically used to dry desert-like conditions and all this rain, the record rainfall that's happened. So best wishes to everyone in impacted areas and to many people just trying to get from point A to point B that might not be impacted, but maybe have flights or something else that they're screwed up because of all the weather issues. But I do hope that you and your family had a very Merry Christmas. May God bless you. And thank you for being here. It is Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. Now, one thing about Mark, remember that you always have life, liberty, and Levin. So as you head towards the weekend, you need to make sure your DVR is always set for life, liberty, and Levin. Saturdays and Sundays, 8 p.m. Eastern, Fox News Channel. That way, even if you go ahead and catch the show live, you always have a backup. And if you happen to miss it, you can always check it out and get your fill of Mark, even heading into this weekend. Now, I've been laying out my expectations based upon President Trump's 20-point plan to save America, what he ran on last year, and the expectations based upon that plan coming into this year. And for the first half hour of the show, in laying that out, just kind of having you think along with me on it. Because as I was talking about some of my expectations, you might have been able to go, yeah, I know that we've had success there. So I'm going to get a little more specific now. Let's drill down on what Trump's 20-point plan to save America actually was, because this will clarify even a little bit more before I get to the hard facts, the hard receipts on all of these 20 different things, and what is truly, I think, mind-blowing. So, as we walk through Trump's 20-point plan to save America, the first one, seal the border, stop the migrant invasion. Seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Boy, does that happen? No kidding, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, President Trump has been so successful that he's been a victim of his own success. Probably knows nowhere more so than on that particular issue. An absolute crisis that we had for 4 years under the Biden administration, open borders, everything else. How quickly did Trump seal the border and stop the migrant invasion? It was incredible, the success and the speed. And again, coming up later in the show, I'm going to have all the specifics on these things. Then you dive into Trump's second point, his 20-point plan to save America. Carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. Okay. Well, you know, there's been a lot of deportations. You know, there's been a lot of legal issues associated with things that have slowed stuff down. There actually has been record-setting deportation activity this year. And a lot of it has been people that are not here legally going, you know what? I don't think I want to end up in, say, Alligator Alcatraz. I think I'll just leave on my own. And so we actually have, despite all the challenges this year, had the largest deportation operation in American history carried out. Record speed on what's happened here. And again, the specifics in a bit. The third point on Trump's 20-point plan to save America, and to be sure, this is a sticking point. This is one that is front and center as we enter the midterm elections next year. It's a concern for a lot of families, maybe you and yours. End inflation and make America affordable again. End inflation and make America affordable again. Now, has inflation been ended? Well, no. I mean, and truth be told, you're never going to end inflation altogether, not literally. Has there been a heck of a lot of progress? There actually has. Are things affordable again? Well, that's where there can be a lot of discussions, a lot of debates, a lot of arguments. But what I'll tell you is that when you take a look at the facts and the progress related to this, it's probably better than what you realize. And actually, a lot of it comes down to the tax policy that a lot of people aren't going to realize until they file their taxes because they didn't make adjustments for massive tax cuts that they've received. But I'm going to dive into the specifics on that one, along with the others in just a bit. The fourth point, Trump's 20-point plan to save America. Make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. Make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. There are a lot of records that have been taking place in the country this year. Record domestic energy production. Yep, it's one of them. Yeah, but Trump just recently canceled the wind farm thing. I've got a stat on even the renewables that'll blow the mind of the wind people that are upset about the offshore wind, which, by the way, for the offshore wind people, you take a look at the negative impact in the oceans. If you're a conservationist, you shouldn't like offshore wind energy. And then the onshore stuff, how many birds are you taking out with those? So I'm just putting that out there because you have a lot of people that will claim to be like environmentalists and then also wind people. And the fact of the matter is they don't wash. You can't actually be an intellectually consistent conservationist, environmentalist, and be a wind energy person because there is enormous damage that is done through wind energy to creatures, especially in the ocean. The fifth point of Trump's 20-point plan to save America. Stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Okay. You know what the president's favorite word is, right? He reminded you in his primetime address recently. It's tariff. It is tariff. And certainly he has used that to an extraordinary degree to accomplish the manufacturing agenda. How much progress has actually been made? Again, I'll have those receipts very specifically for you. The sixth point, Trump's 20-point plan to save America. Large tax cuts for workers, no tax on tips. Large tax cuts for workers, no tax on tips. Probably doesn't need much of an explanation. You know that happened. Again, we'll get specific. Number 7, defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. Defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. Okay. All right. A lot of people, especially those on the left, might say, oh, but he's a dictator and he's really, this is dangerous what he's doing. And by the way, the plaques, did you see the plaque that called Joe Biden the worst president in American history? Yeah, I know. That's just, oh my gosh, that's what really matters. What's really important. Yeah. The president has taken extraordinary action to defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and yes, the right to keep and bear arms. I'll break it down in just a bit. Number 8, prevent World War III, restore peace in Europe and in the Middle East, build a great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country, all made in America. Okay, you started looking at this. And President Trump has always been a man of peace. It was always the great irony in his first term when you had the left freaking out about him, having access to nukes and, oh my gosh, he's a loose cannon. We're going to end up in all these wars. And he ended up being the only president that didn't start a new war. And the only thing he did was end the ISIS caliphate. And then everybody else was like, holy crap, we better not mess with Trump in the United States. And so you take a look at how much has been accomplished in resolving conflicts around the world. What's being worked on right now with Russia and Ukraine? You've got Zelensky that's coming to Mar-a-Lago on Sunday. We are hearing that more progress has been made on legitimate peace between Ukraine and Russia. More progress in the past 2 weeks than in the prior year altogether. So it does sound like we could be on the precipice of unprecedented peace. Something we've talked about on the show, and I've been guessing for the great one. But also all of the other peace agreements that the president has hammered out. We'll talk about it all. And yes, the president has laid out the agenda for the Great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country as well. Number 9, in the weaponization of government against the American people. In the weaponization of government against the American people. Yeah, the only weaponized aspect of the federal government that people might say is if you are not in this country legally, you are a target. If you're doing the wrong things, if you're breaking the law, yeah, you are going to be targeted by the federal government. If you're an honest, law-abiding American citizen, you don't have to worry about that crap anymore. In fact, you don't have to worry about a lot of bureaucracy anymore because of how much of the government itself has been cut. We'll have the receipts on that. Stop the migrant crime epidemic. Demolish the foreign drug cartels. Crush gang violence. And lock up violent offenders. That certainly has been the focus of ICE all throughout the course of this year, hasn't it? For all the activity that's taken place to date, what really has been the focus has been the so-called criminal illegal immigrants, not just illegal immigrants, but those that are have rap sheets once they're in this country on top of it, and then people that are associating with them. So let's say that you are hanging out with a criminal illegal immigrant and you're also here illegally. Yeah, you're going to get swept up too. And the odds are you're probably not up to great things yourself, aside from the fact that you're in the country illegally. Oh, by the way. Number 11, rebuild our cities, including Washington, D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. Rebuild our cities, including D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. Well, there's a lot of work to do, but certainly a lot has been done, and with D.C. specifically, making the place safer. Not for a lack of effort by the president. Number 12, strengthen and modernize our military, making it without question the strongest and most powerful in the world. Well, led by the War Secretary, Pete Hegseth. There's a lot there. Remember coming into the year, you had Hegseth. Oh, the guy's not qualified. What a joke this is. He's just putting in people he liked from Fox. You notice how nobody talks about Hegseth anymore and how the U.S. military is incapable? And you notice whether it is the strikes that took place against ISIS that were effective yesterday, the incredible operation ending Iran's nuclear program over the summer, or the boats that go boom, the narco drug traffickers. You notice how nobody is questioning Hegseth anymore? Nobody is questioning whether we are strategic, successful, capable. It tells you as much as you need to know about all that. The 13th point of Trump's 20-point plan, keep the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Now, that might be one that's off the radar a little bit, and people might be taking a look at the price of gold and silver that are up significantly, record highs for gold and silver throughout the course of the year, and thinking, you know what, the dollar's in trouble. I've got some, again, surprising receipts on this for you. Often perception and reality are not necessarily in the same place. You can take a look at what's happened with the price of, say, Bitcoin and Ether, for example, in the crypto space, and take a look at what's happened with gold and silver and realize that, you know what? It actually is more the crypto money that it's made its way to gold and silver of late than it is anything to do with the U.S. dollar specifically. And I'll break that down as well in just a bit. And we'll round out President Trump's 20-point plan. That's coming up next. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
AAA says 109 million people drove to their holiday destinations, 8 million flew, and nearly 5 million either took a cruise or got on a train. Now, folks driving might notice cheaper gas prices, and that's because AAA says the national average is around $2.85 a gallon, which is about 20 cents cheaper than this time last year.
And there are a lot of things along those lines where you start taking a look at inflation. You start taking a look at how much money is in the pocket of the average person compared to this time last year. And you find out, you know what? The average person, the average American is actually a decent amount better off than they were this time a year ago. And you can start thinking that way for yourself. Are you better off than you were a year ago at this point? If you're the average American, the answer is yes. And I understand the affordability thing is a thing for a lot of people. But has there been progress made? Abso-frickin-lutely there has. And not just on that issue, but across every single one of President Trump's 20 points to save America. Something to where if during the course of a 4-year presidency, you were able to get check marks against all 20 of these things, you'd done something. The man has knocked the cover off the ball with almost all of these within the first 11 plus months of his second term. By the way, that was Fox's Asher Red on the report. Now, I've been going through President Trump's 20-point plan to save America, what he ran on, what the expectations were coming into this year. Setting up each one of these, so we take a look at what he's actually accomplished against each one of them. And I'm going to do that as we get into next hour. The 14th point of his 20-point plan, fight for and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes to the retirement age. Number 15, cancel the electric vehicle mandate, cut costly and burdensome regulations. The 16th, cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, racial gender ideology, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our kids. Number 17, keep men out of women's sports. 18, deport pro-Hamas radicals, make our college campuses safe again. 19, secure our elections. 20, unite our country by bringing it to new and record levels of success. I've got the receipts on all 20 of these things. Coming up next, Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin.
This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
The S&P 500, it was really outperforming. It hit its 39th record close, the longest winning streak since November. And this rally is backed by real growth, with the U.S. economy in the third quarter growing by 4.3% and November inflation coming in lower than expected. On the trade front, the president's agenda is delivering a massive windfall. New data shows the U.S. has brought in more than $200 billion in tariff revenue this year. Families are also getting relief at the pump, seeing the cheapest December gas prices since 2020.
Oh, by the way. I mean, that's like holy crap material right there. Pretty much all of it. There is so much more that has taken place, so much more success that's been achieved within the first 11 plus months of this Trump administration that I think even most Trump supporters are aware of. It's so easy for Trump to have accomplished so much so quickly that you take it for granted. You know, we're very much the instant gratification society. We're very much the group of people that be like, man, what have you done today? Yeah, yesterday you ended up, bringing peace to another warring nation. But what have you done today? Yes, we have significantly lower gas prices. And yes, we have record performance in the stock market and financial markets, record 401k balances and the like. What about now? What happened in the last 30 minutes? One of the things I've been working on, this is Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. Hope you have had a very Merry Christmas holiday season for you. And I certainly have. But one of the things that I've been working on this week, the receipts. Now, I mentioned at the onset of the show, and I spent the first hour breaking down my expectations based upon Trump's 20-point plan to save America coming into this year. And then what these specific 20 points of Trump's plan happen to be. Now I'm going to bring you the receipts. Now I always talk about there being two sides to stories and one side of facts. What I've done with every one of those points is taking a look at what the ironclad facts are. And this is where I guarantee you there will be some big surprises. And so rather than reinventing the wheel here, let's get right into just kind of breaking down my top takeaways to start this year. So I said that if you've waited for much of your life hoping for fundamental changes within the way that our federal government operates, as in having less of it intruding into your life, this is your year. Okay, so what's happened so far? Have we had less federal government intruding in our lives and everything? Do we have less federal government? As of December 23rd, there are approximately 271,000 fewer federal government employees. By the way, we just learned the FBI closing the Hoover building as well. Something that Trump had talked about. FBI Director Kash Patel confirming that today. One more big federal government building is going to be gone. But you have 271,000 fewer federal government employees today than you did on January 20th. Let me put this in a different context. The size of the federal bureaucracy, excluding the military, the size of the federal bureaucracy, the civilian federal bureaucracy, has shrunk by greater than 9%. All the federal government largesse, there is over 9% less of it now than there was on January 20th. That's despite all of the legal opinions by leftist judges, leftist presidents, judges that have been appointed by them that tried to say, no, you can't, as the most powerful person in the world, decide who gets to work for your administration. No, you have to keep these federal employees in place. No, we, the leftist judges appointed by Biden, Obama, and the like, we really believe that the average American is supposed to work to support federal employees rather than federal employees serving the American public. No, we should have people that obviously are not necessary that the American people continue to pay for. Because here's the next thing. Think about this. So the federal government is close to a tenth of the size that it was when Trump took office this time. All right, so about a tenth less government. Have you noticed any difference in your life? Any? Has anything in your life changed in the least specific to the federal government? There's not a freaky chance, right? Unless you are one of those 271,000 federal employees that was directly impacted. No change in your life to get rid of a tenth of the federal government. It's kind of a big deal, right? Kind of a big deal. Trump has been shrinking the size of the federal bureaucracy by nearly 1% per month. Holy crap. Kind of a big deal. This is our year. Okay. Next one. If you've been waiting for the death of political correctness and wokeness, this is your year. Okay. Some of this is contextual, right? When you start talking about political correctness, wokeness, what has Trump accomplished here? Well, I ended up factoring in companies that just kind of renamed their DEI departments. If you take a look at corporate America generally, starting there, when it comes to wokeness and political correctness, you've had over half of corporate America react to DEI in some way. Like walking it back. In some cases, just renaming DEI position something else to try to hide in. But excluding that, if you only take a look at those that definitively have reduced or eliminated DEI programs and anti-American, checkbox here type of hiring practices, 20% of companies have eliminated DEI programs completely this year. 20% gonzo altogether. An additional 10% of companies with DEI crap still in place have at least reduced the spending and influence of those programs this year. So, straight away, factoring in the fakers who just rename stuff because they don't believe in meritocracy. They believe that we should be checking boxes and promoting people based upon checking of boxes. Even factoring that in, about a third, about one out of every three companies has gotten rid of their DEI crap or at least significantly reduced it. Additionally, 432 colleges and universities across 47 states have eliminated DEI programs this year. 432 colleges and universities have eliminated, outright gone, DEI programs. 47 states, which means that, even most of the blue states, right? It's kind of a big deal. How much less indoctrination and the like comes along with that? Speaking of college wokeness, and this is huge, the NCAA changed its official policy stance to end men that are pretending to be women from competing as women in collegiate athletics. Kind of a big deal, right? So the NCAA changed the policy to make sure that you can't have men waking up and going, hey, I feel like a chick today. I think I'm going to go run against the women. Can't have that crap taking place anymore. Can't happen. President Trump also ended trannies in the military, including the insane taxpayer-funded conversions for those who had enlisted. Because, that was a big point of abuse. A lot of trannies that would get in there that would only get in the military because they wanted the transition paid for by you and me. Crap doesn't happen anymore. No more tranny in the military garbage. If you've been waiting for a time in which the godless, soulless, and slanderous legacy news media would become irrelevant, this is your year. Okay, that was the next one I had mentioned. Well, what's happened this year? You've seen the fallout from this all throughout the year. You've had massive leadership changes at major news organizations, including CBS News, right? You may or may not remember, but NPR, massive turnover there, all things considered. Also, just a lot less people at NPR generally because, we're not paying for it the way we used to. Also, NBC, the massive breakup from MSNBC. What is now MS Now, right? Which, by the way, what do you think of when you think of MS Now? It does sound like a disorder, doesn't it? Sound like some kind of condition? But I digress. And by the way, not only have we seen the massive changes in leadership and personnel at CBS News, at NPR, at NBC, at MS Now, but even the BBC, even extending outside of this country, following the blow up of their January 6th fake news editing scandal, right? Massive changes there. Okay, so if you've wanted the rule of law to be upheld, I mentioned that this is your year. Well, this can go in a lot of directions. Though consider this. The very first law that President Trump signed, you remember what it was? What was the first law that Trump signed? It was straight away. Then the first few days of his administration. And it happened to be the Lincoln-Riley Act. Remember that? Signed the Lincoln-Riley Act into law in January. President Trump has signed 12 executive orders so far aimed at improving law and order. Here's another point that is important in all this regarding the legal challenges. 24 cases involving the Trump administration that have made it to the Supreme Court this year. Of those, the administration has received favorable outcomes in 21 of those 24 cases. So basically about 9 in 10 Trump is winning on. About 9 in 10. So talking about the rule of law being upheld, that's huge. That's huge. So much attention is given to the lower courts with the agendas holding up the Trump administration's agenda. So often, by the time it makes it to the Supreme Court, Team Trump wins. Mention if you've wanted equal justice under the law, that this is your year. If you've wanted to seal the border, stop the migrant invasion, this is your year. Well, of all of Trump's year one achievements, I mean, this is probably the one that is best known, right? But I think it's also the one that's most underappreciated. Because not only did President Trump follow through on immediately sealing the southern border, total illegal border crossings, including gotaways, are at the lowest level in recorded history, having declined 99+% from the Biden era levels. And so to put it another way, there were often more illegal border crossings in a typical day under the Biden administration than there have been in over 11 months under the Trump administration. I will repeat. More illegal border crossings in a typical day under the Biden administration than there have been in over 11 months under the Trump administration. And actually, at this pace, probably would be during the entire 4 years. Aside from the deportation stuff that we will get to. Now, if you've wanted the largest deportation operation in American history, a lot of people are like, where's the mass deportation stuff? Well, it's actually happened, but it's happened in a way that many don't necessarily appreciate. I'll pick up there next. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
As a consumer, you can carry the success or failure of businesses in the palm of your hand. Their success can depend on your decision to spend money with them or their competitor. Well, my friends at Pure Talk would like to say thank you from the bottom of their hearts for choosing Pure Talk for your wireless needs. Because of you, they've had a record-breaking year. Because of your generosity through their Roundup for Charity program, they've been able to donate over $500,000 to America's Warrior Partnership who stands on the front lines of helping to prevent veteran suicide. Your patronage has allowed Pure Talk to donate 1,000 hand-sewed Made in America flags to your fellow veterans. And when you choose Pure Talk as your wireless provider, you help Pure Talk support American jobs right here in our country. Like I said, as a consumer, you have the power to make or break companies. And with the money the big wireless guys throw around on advertising, you're inundated with offers everywhere you look. So from everyone in the Pure Talk family, thank you for your trust, and God bless you.
It's all about more money in people's pockets that they earned and that they deserve to spend or invest however they want to. It's going to be great for the economy.
No doubt. Big part of the story there. Congressman David Kustoff from Tennessee. I happen to be Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin, wishing you and your family a very Merry Christmas season. Happy holidays. Hope they certainly have been for you. The terrible weather in most of the Northeast, the floods in L.A. Heart goes out to a lot of folks here. So be careful, certainly on the travel side as well. What I've been taking a look at, Trump's 20-point plan to save America. My expectations based upon that plan coming into this year and what has actually been accomplished. And so we're taking a look at the receipts, the remarkable success that President Trump has had in the first 11 plus months at accomplishing his 20-point Save America agenda. And as we break all of this down, mentioned that if you wanted the largest deportation operation in American history, which was one of the things that Trump promised, I mean, there have been a lot of legal issues that have slowed things down, right? And you might think, well, we just haven't had it. And you'll often hear, oh, the Trump administration is not hitting their target. Oh, my gosh, they are, and so much more, and in ways that is actually far more efficient for you and me. So let me explain. If you have wanted the largest deportation operation in American history to remove the record number of illegal immigrants from this country, this has been your year. We have had a record-breaking 2.5+ million deportations that have taken place since the onset of Trump's presidency 11 months ago. Over 2.5 million. This includes 1.9 million self-deportations, which is the single best kind of deportation you can have because, guess what? Just to detain and then eventually deport your average illegal immigrant, $17,000 per person. So if ICE has to get involved in detaining and then deporting, the average cost is $17,000. Thank you, Joe Biden. So how much better is it when they go, you know what? I don't think I want to be hanging out in Alligator Alcatraz. I don't think I want to be walking the streets waiting to see if I'm next. And they decide to go on their own. It's the single best kind of deportation you can have. We have averaged 7,350 deportations per day since Donald Trump became president of the United States. Oh, by the way, pick up there next. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
As a consumer, you can carry the success or failure of businesses in the palm of your hand. Their success can depend on your decision to spend money with them or their competitor. Well, my friends at Pure Talk would like to say thank you from the bottom of their hearts for choosing Pure Talk for your wireless needs. Because of you, they've had a record-breaking year. Because of your generosity through their Roundup for Charity program, they've been able to donate over $500,000 to America's Warrior Partnership, who stands on the front lines of helping to prevent veteran suicide. Your patronage has allowed Pure Talk to donate 1,000 hand-sewed Made in America flags to your fellow veterans. And when you choose Pure Talk as your wireless provider, you help Pure Talk support American jobs right here in our country. Like I said, as a consumer, you have the power to make or break companies. And with the money the big wireless guys throw around on advertising, you're inundated with offers everywhere you look. So from everyone in the Pure Talk family, thank you for your trust, and God bless you.
Mark Levin says today what the backbenchers will repeat tomorrow. Call Mark at 877-381-3811.
These are rules that are set up to make sure our roads are safe. And so if you can't speak English, if you haven't gone through the proper training courses, you shouldn't be behind the wheel of a big rig.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a controversial thing either, should it? Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy there talking about the move to cancel, as we have found, thousands of illegally issued CDLs. If you are traveling, coming back from making a visit with friends, family, and you have a big rig that is ready to run you off the road right now, reasonable chance that it might be somebody that has no business driving a vehicle of any sort, let alone that big rig. Thousands of illegally issued CDLs. I mean, it is a fascinating thing when you can illegally enter this country, sidle up to somebody and go, hey, say this word I say asylum. And they go, oh, yeah. Okay, so you're a magic A-word person. We're now going to go ahead and hook you up with this NGO over here that's going to get you set up on all these government goodies. Where do you want to go? You want to stay in like a 5-star in Manhattan? Okay, we'll get you covered. And then somewhere along the way, not even being able to speak the language in many cases, certainly not being able to legally drive and obtain a license, they're then given the opportunity to have a commercial driver's license in states like California and Washington. And that you have a legal challenge trying to permit those that are not even legally in this country to retain commercial driver's licenses. In the grand scheme of people that are jacked up in the brain, I do not know. I can't even begin to imagine what goes on in the brain of the average person that says, yeah, you know what? An illegal immigrant should have a commercial driver's license. You are broken in the brain if you think that should be so. You could be the biggest asylumist out there. You could be the open borders for everybody. How in your right mind do you think it's smart to have people that are not even in this country legally driving commercially? You not even care about your safety on the road. It just is backcrap, incredible, crazy. I'm going through the receipts, and I had actually left off with illegal immigration and the mass deportations. What hasn't been captured in much of the mainstream news narrative is the record number of deportations that have taken place. It's actually been over 2.5 million. It's actually been over 7,350 deportations per day that have taken place. Most of them self-deportations, people seeing that ICE is going out there in communities and they're going, you know what? I don't want to be swept up by ICE. I think I'm going to go ahead and leave on my own, which is the single best thing that can happen. I'm going to pick up on some of those points there as well in a moment. I am Brian Mudd here for Mark Levin. Always an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. The host of the Brian Mudd Show, broadcast on my home station, WJNO in West Palm Beach. And you can always catch the Brian Mudd Show podcast wherever you get your podcast, at Brian Mudd Radio socially. And thank you for taking the time to tune in, to listen. And speaking of which, you can, while you don't have the great one tonight, tune in this weekend, 8 p.m. Eastern, Fox News Channel. Remember to always set your DVR as well, Saturday and Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Life, Liberty, and Levin. We've had Mike, who's been very patiently waiting by as we've been going through the Trump 20-point plan. And now that I'm breaking down the receipts, has at least one concern out there about maybe something Trump hasn't taken on. Mike, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you, too.
Thank you.
My question is, where are we at right now in our national debt? Is it 27 trillion or 37 trillion?
Yeah, so I wish it was actually either one of those. It's worse. It's actually 38.5 trillion in real time. So,
my God.
Yeah, not getting better. Not getting better.
Yeah, and I don't blame Donald Trump. I blame the House of Representatives and the Senate. How in the hell do they keep spending this money that we don't have?
It's fair. It is legitimate. It factors into inflation. So I'll just give you a couple of things to work with. And it's not going to make you necessarily feel any better, but it's a very valid point as we're talking about not having passed the budget for next year. Remember, we could still have another partial federal government shutdown that hits by the end of January because they haven't passed a new budget. So the first thing about this is the most recent fiscal year was set in motion October of last year, before Trump was president, before the current composition of Congress. So you go back to your government years run from October through September. That's why the partial government shutdown began when it ended up beginning this fall. So if you take a look at what was accomplished in terms of reducing the deficit, there actually was a 2% reduction in the size of the federal deficit from the prior year to this year. That was part Biden administration and previous Congress into part Trump administration and the current Congress. And so is that good? I don't think so. But there was at least minute progress in reducing the size of the federal deficit. Now, one thing I will say is for all of President Trump's accomplishments, as you talk about Congress just wanting to spend, and one of the big things that should not happen, we should not keep these Obama era, the Biden era, the COVID ACA tax credits in place. Just an absolute ridiculousness that 92% of Obamacare policy is being paid for by everybody else because the healthcare crisis is Obamacare. It's not affordable care. We need to break the back of the insurance first model and have the money go into our pockets like President Trump wants to do with Trump Care. That's what needs to happen on that particular. But that's where we would spend a lot of additional money, for example. If we don't spend all of that money, we save hundreds of billions of dollars right there. And there are ways, if Congress gets smarter, that we can reduce the deficit significantly as we head into next year. But President Trump himself is not the best on the budget in particular. And I appreciate the concern. I appreciate the call. Thanks for hanging on there and bringing up that point, Mike. And I'm going to continue with my breakdown here of the receipts on President Trump, because I was breaking down most recently the deportation piece, and it kind of factors into the budget side of it, too. So mentioned the cost to ICE for deporting. A single illegal immigrant deporting when ICE has to get involved is $17,000 per person. And so when you have most of the deportations that are self-deportations, we are saving a significant amount of money that way. So basically, when you take a look at what happened in the first 11 plus months, effectively in those 11 plus months, we have reduced the illegal immigrant population by about 1 year's worth of Biden's open border policies. OK, so if you're trying to figure out what's been accomplished, you have undone basically about a year, the most recent year, 24, of Biden's open border policies. And given how much harder it is to deport those who are already here compared to just opening the border and letting every person come in, this is asylum. Yeah, that's a big accomplishment. What's more is that the Trump administration recently finalized a deal with Boeing to significantly accelerate deportations going forward. So the Trump administration's goal is on their own to get to where we can deport 3,000 per day. If we did that and we keep with the self-deportations that are taking place, you could see that 2.5 million number easily go north of 3 million next year. So real progress being made. I mentioned that if you wanted to end high inflation and for life to become more affordable again, that this should be your year. Now, this is obviously a big-time hot button issue. This is going to be the issue heading into the midterms next year, affordability. I've always said that you can lie to people about what policy will do, and those who are inclined to believe you may for a time, but you can't lie to people about what is or isn't in their wallet because they know. Right. And I mentioned this, it's funny that we still are having these issues, these debates at the end of 2025. I remember all the way back to the very beginning of the whole Obamacare argument. That's where I actually ended up framing that phrase that I've used ever since. You can lie to people about what policy will do, and those who are inclined to believe you may for a time, but you can't lie to people about what is or isn't in their wallet because they know. Because and actually going through the legislation, breaking it all down before it passed, it was clear that Obamacare was not going to make health care affordable, that it was actually going to make it more expensive. Exactly what we have seen, unless it is subsidized entirely by everybody else, which just makes health care that much less affordable for everybody who isn't being subsidized. So, bottom line is, when it comes to affordability, if you're having a tough time out there, that is your reality, period. Right? Some people are really continuing to struggle under the weight of the cost pressures, the overall affordability issues. It's very real. With that said, the fact of the matter is that the average American is faring far better today compared to January 20th. The average person is faring far better today. Let me give you an idea. The Consumer Price Index, so your inflation rate, for the first 3 quarters of President Trump's administration has averaged 2.7%. Okay, well, that's lower than the 2.9% rate that Trump inherited from Biden in 24, despite the impact of tariffs. So the inflation rate itself is lower, but also importantly, and this is the big part, the average income has increased by 3.5% year over year at the same time. What does that mean? Well, it means that net of inflation, the average American has finally been getting ahead again. If you're the average person performing the way that the average person in this country is, at work and otherwise, and having to pay for stuff, you are getting ahead by close to 1%. By the time you pay all the bills, all the same stuff goes out, you got about 1% more money in your pocket than you did a year ago. How does that compare? Well, under the Biden administration, the average American was about 3% worse off than they were previously. Okay, so when you factored in how much is the average person making, what is the inflation rate, under the Biden administration, you were 3% worse off. Already, 11 plus months, you're close to 1% better off by the time you get done paying for all this stuff. Is that, problem solved and the end of the story? No. Again, a lot of people are struggling. There's more work to be done here. But on that note, not only is there real progress, but what's more is that the U.S. economic growth rate surging, as has been evidenced by the 4.3% third quarter growth rate. And by the way, remember, that followed 3.8% economic growth in the second quarter. So think about this for a second. The 2 full quarters under the Trump administration, we've had average growth of over 4%. Over 4%. Holy freaking cow. So with the economy surging far in excess of inflation, that should help continue to facilitate wage growth despite some of the challenges that are presented by AI, for example, in some fields, and the pressures that have been in place with illegal immigrants that have been taking jobs. You talk about affordability. How much inflation have been pushed into the system because of illegal immigrants? Now, I've done lots of analysis on this in recent years, including housing inflation. Affordable housing been taken by the illegal immigrants that Biden allowed in. And so that created inflationary pressures all over the place. Just simply deporting to the extent that we are helps bring down the rate of inflation independent of anything else. It's one of the big reasons why these so-called economic experts have been dead wrong about inflation this year, thinking it's going to be far worse because of the Trump tariffs, when the rate of inflation has continued to come down. And that is in large part due to fewer illegal immigrants. You get rid of them, that helps take the edge off of pricing pressures. So we'll pick up there next. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
As a consumer, you can carry the success or failure of businesses in the palm of your hand. Their success can depend on your decision to spend money with them or their competitor. Well, my friends at Pure Talk would like to say thank you from the bottom of their hearts for choosing Pure Talk for your wireless needs. Because of you, they've had a record-breaking year. Because of your generosity through their Roundup for Charity program, they've been able to donate over $500,000 to America's Warrior Partnership, who stands on the front lines of helping to prevent veteran suicide. Your patronage has allowed Pure Talk to donate 1,000 hand-sewed Made in America flags to your fellow veterans. And when you choose Pure Talk as your wireless provider, you help Pure Talk support American jobs right here in our country. Like I said, as a consumer, you have the power to make or break companies. And with the money the big wireless guys throw around on advertising, you're inundated with offers everywhere you look. So from everyone in the Pure Talk family, thank you for your trust, and God bless you.
President Trump's pressure campaign against Venezuela is heating up. The Wall Street Journal reports that the U.S. military is expanding its presence in the Caribbean. The Pentagon reportedly moving a large number of special operations aircraft there, as well as multiple cargo planes and equipment.
Fox's Kevin Corke on that report. Oh, by the way, another thing that President Trump was doing on Christmas Day, working on getting all of those pieces into place around Venezuela. Not good for narco terrorists, the drug runners, the boats that go boom. Not as many of those right now, in part because they're kind of surrounded out of Venezuela right now as the pressure campaign on Maduro kicks up. One of the things to be mindful of with that, by the way, you take a look at the new Axis power, so to speak. Venezuela is not just Venezuela. Venezuela is connected to China. As I have long said, China is not just China. China is Russia. China is Russia, is also North Korea. With Little Rocket Man is Iran. Is Venezuela. Is Cuba. Is Nicaragua. And one of the fascinating things you talk about the success as we're going through Trump's receipts this year. The incredible success against his 20-point plan. Peace being one of those, by the way. Peace through strength on display, including the situation in Venezuela right now. Isolating these Axis powers from one another. The effort that has been undertaken so that Iran was isolated. Did China step in to defend Iran when we took out their nuclear program? No. Did Russia? No. That was huge, right? Got the Middle East on our side. We've been getting the Middle Eastern countries levered to us as opposed to China. Huge part of the Trump strategy to continue. Now this with Venezuela. Is Russia doing anything here? Is China? Not that we know of, right? This is big. So we're continuing to take each of these bad actors and deal with them independently without the rest of that new Axis group coming in and causing any trouble. It is masterful success in many different respects, and specific to Venezuela. You know, obviously, you've got the drug running. It's been reduced by 30% into the United States. And so it's been huge success. So as I'm breaking down President Trump's 20-point plan, the receipts against it, if you've wanted to take advantage of U.S. energy resources, as opposed to being reliant on foreign sources of energy, and it factors into the whole Venezuela thing, right? This is your year. You see, total domestic energy production, new record levels this year. We've increased domestic energy production by 3.9%. That's been driven by a 3% increase in oil production, greater than 2% increase in electricity, 5% increase in nat gas, and get this, an 11% increase in renewables, led by solar. So yeah, even with the wind stuff going away, a double-digit increase in renewables this year. Oh, by the way, we'll continue with the success and the receipts next. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
New numbers say the nationwide U.S. murder rate fell dramatically in 2025 in what's likely the biggest single-year drop ever recorded.
Oh, that's kind of a big deal, too. Fox's Paul Stevens on the report. A record drop in the murder rate this year. Gee, I wonder why that is. Why would that be? Could it be that we've gotten rid of over 2.5 million illegal immigrants? Could it be that we've had a focus on criminal illegal immigrants? the bad hombres, the president might say. You know, the average non-citizen that has been greater than 9 times as likely to commit crime compared to you and me, including many multiples more likely to murder somebody. So it's a funny thing that happens. You combat illegal immigration, and things get a lot safer, including a record drop in the murder rate. But you still have a lot of the large cities that don't want the Trump administration to help, including the one most notorious for murders, which would be Chicago. No, we can't have the Guard coming in here and helping make our city safer. That wouldn't be good. We like people getting killed on the regular. You know, it's just Chi-town, you know, the way we do it. I can't imagine the people that actually vote for people that are like, you know what's good? More crime. I want a less safe community. I want fewer job opportunities because illegal immigrants have them. I'm going to keep voting for those people. That's a special person right there. Anyway, hey there. Hope you had a Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you. Brian Mudd here for Mark Levin. Always an honor and a pleasure. Host of the Brian Mudd Show, a hub out of WJNO in West Palm Beach. Catch me at Brian Mudd Radio socially. The Brian Mudd Show podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. I've been going through the receipts for President Trump's first 11 plus months, breaking down during the course of this show each of the president's 20-point plan, each of those items to save America. Now, if you are just joining us, welcome. Thank you. Catch up. Check out the podcast after the show and get yourself into those first 2 hours, because I have to pick up and move along in the receipts that President Trump has delivered during the course of this year. We're up to manufacturing, his promise on manufacturing. I mentioned that if you wanted American companies to return manufacturing to the U.S. instead of relying on countries like China, that this is your year. Okay, so what's actually happened this year? Well, get this, all in, 59% of manufacturing companies that do business in the United States have increased manufacturing activity through existing footprints and or reshoring operations stateside in 2025. 59% of all manufacturing companies in doing business in the United States increased operations this year. So what does this mean? Well, it's led to an increase in U.S. manufacturing employment of 244,000 jobs, while you've had an additional 174,000 jobs that have been protected, jobs that would have been lost that have been protected. So round trip, over 400,000 jobs that are here that wouldn't be. 11 plus months just in U.S. manufacturing. Specific to the reliance on China. Get this, we've gone from 22% of the goods sold in the United States being manufactured from China to most recently 14%. We got more work to do, right? But already a drop from 22% of all the stuff that we buy made in China down to 14% and declining in real time. And a lot of that has to do with President Trump's tariff policies and American First executive orders to encourage U.S. manufacturing. If you've wanted to lower taxes, including an end to taxes on tips, overtime, Social Security, I mentioned that this is your year. Okay, well, done on that, right? What did President Trump's one big, beautiful bill deliver on? Oh, boy, it delivered on those promises in a very big way, right? The average employee who earns tips saving about $2,000 annually in federal taxes. Average tipped employee, an extra $2,000 in your pocket. The average employee who works overtime during a given year, saving about $1,400 in federal income taxes annually. How about Social Security? Well, those collecting Social Security, approximately 90% of all recipients will have no federal income tax liability for Social Security. What does that mean? About $1,500 per recipient per year in savings in federal income taxes. That is what the BBB delivered on in a very big way. Now, here's the next piece of this. And this is where a lot of it's been misunderstood. You have a lot of conversation about, hey, you're going to have these record tax refunds that are taking place. Once people file their taxes, they're going to see a whole lot of money coming back because the average person that is benefiting this way hasn't changed withholding. So the same level of tax is still being taken out. So it's going to come back in the form of a tax refund, which, by the way, and this is for a different time, but if you're the type of person that gets to filing taxes and your goal is to have a big tax refund, that's not good. That's not good. You probably should seek some financial guidance because giving a income or a interest-free loan to the federal government all year, not exactly good financial management. So the goal should not be to have a massive tax refund. It's just a byproduct of people not realizing what the changes mean to them yet. But most people that do end up with significant refunds need to be making some changes to their withholding so you can just get to keep more of your own money all throughout the course of the year. That will obviously help with affordability in a very big way. Mention that if you've wanted a president who will defend our Constitution and constitutional rights, that this is your year. Okay, well, 97 Biden-era executive actions have been formally rescinded by President Trump's executive orders. 16 Biden-era regulatory rules have been overturned through the Congressional Review Act process. Got a bunch more that are currently under consideration by the federal courts. And as I referenced early in the show, President Trump's win rate before the Supreme Court is approximately 90%. So Trump has taken executive action to protect free speech. He's taken executive action on Second Amendment rights, restoring meritocracy, establishing a religious liberty commission, on voter integrity. He's taken action rescinding treating homosexual alphabet people as a protected class. And notably, the birthright citizenship executive order that is also now going to be under consideration by the United States Supreme Court. An interesting one to watch for sure. If you've wanted an end to foreign wars and conflicts that entangle and are often paid for by the United States, I mentioned that this is your year. Okay, well, man, has it ever been, right? The receipts on this one, massive. President Trump proved during his first term to be the ultimate arbiter of peace. All right, that's what happened during his first term. Now, following the messes that Biden created, the weakness of Biden and what that led to around the world, man, that's led to Trump becoming a historic peacemaker and a historic unifier already in his second term. You know, it wasn't the UN that brought about peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia, Cambodia and Thailand. Wasn't the UN or anybody else that brought peace to the Iran and Israel war, Gazans in Israel, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, India and Pakistan. Wasn't the UN or anybody else that brought peace between Egypt and Ethiopia or Serbia and Kosovo. It was President Trump. And he has all those other ones that you might not have even known were really going on or whatever. Those are the other wars that Trump has ended, that he negotiated the end to. Kind of a big deal. He's brought about a record amount of peace in a short period of time. And obviously, working on the big one here, right? The hardest one, the Russia-Ukraine war. And even as far as U.S. involvement goes, while we've strongly supported Ukraine against Russia's aggression, we've not made that a free lunch, have we? President Trump negotiated good terms for us. We're being paid back from Ukraine by natural resources. So we got that rare earth deal in place, some of the related minerals and natural resources. So we're not hosed as taxpayers for helping out Ukraine anymore. And then the ongoing weapons that are provided to Ukraine, they're sold through NATO, as opposed to just, again, being handed over and you and me paying for them. Every aspect has been better. And of course, we now have President Zelensky. It's going to be making his way to Mar-a-Lago on Sunday as they're trying to put the final touches on a peace agreement. We're hearing that the past 2 weeks have been extremely constructive in terms of progress towards ending the Russian-Ukraine war. Some reason for real optimism here. Okay, I mentioned that if you've wanted an end to the weaponization of the federal government against select groups of people, that this would be your year. Well, shoot, from Arctic frost and the Biden administration's unconstitutional targeting of members of Congress, among others, to IRS targeting of conservatives, pressure put on financial institutions to debank conservatives, the pressure put on big tech to censor conservative speech, deplatform conservatives. It's all over, right? All that nonsense, that crap has been cut out. It's a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. So we continue to walk through Trump's 20-point plan, the receipts, the progress on it. If you've wanted an end to the migrant crime and drug epidemic, I mentioned that this is your year. Well, with non-citizens having become 914% more likely to commit crimes compared to legal citizens by the end of the Biden administration due to the open border policies that opened the floodgates to all comers. No surprise that with a closed border and over 2.6 million fewer illegal immigrants, we have that big decrease in crime, including, as mentioned in the clip at the open here this hour, the record decrease in murders. So about that, as of the most recent information available, the decline in crime looks like this. Homicides, 17% lower. Robberies, 25% lower. Thefts, 25% lower. Overall crimes committed in the United States down 11% through the first 11 months this year. Property crimes, 12% lower. So if you wanted to see safety restored in large cities, that's also part of what goes on this year. I'll pick up there next. Brian Mudd in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin as we are taking a look at the receipts that have been delivered by the president during the course of this first 11 plus months, and they have been significant. Now, I left off by talking about the most recent available information, the crime. We had a huge decline, 17% fewer homicides, record decline year over year. Robberies off 25%, thefts 25% lower. Overall violent crime across the country off double digits, property crime too. And then, as we take a look at Trump's 20-point plan, if you've wanted to see safety restored in the large cities, mention that this is your year. Well, picking up on the overall numbers, the improvements in crime across large cities, it's been the most significant. Why? Oh, well, a lot of the focus about immigration enforcement, removing criminal illegal immigrants, but also in part due to President Trump's move to provide National Guard support to large cities, including D.C., where the overall crime rate greater than 20% lower than a year ago. Mention that if you've wanted to see our military rebuilt without wokeness, that this would be your year. Well, mention it a bit earlier in the receipts. The president ended the days of tranny policies in the military. But the overall impact? Oh, it's a whole lot bigger than that. While rebranding the Defense Department, the War Department, you have War Secretary Pete Hegseth that's done what? Well, he's focused on reinstilling fitness and readiness to the armed forces, insisting that the days of fat troops, for example, are over. And that from generals on down, our military members need to be fit and ready to serve in battle if needed. So no more tranny military stuff, no more fatzos in the military. We're going to be ready. I mentioned that if you wanted to see the integrity of the U.S. dollar preserved around the world, that this is your year. Okay, so about that. After years of declines, the U.S. dollar's place as the world's reserve currency. Well, it's grown this year from a total of about $12.3 trillion held by foreign governments to $13 trillion most recently. So this is something that's really off the radar, aside from the most wonky people. But you actually have seen the U.S. dollar become 5% more of what countries around the world have been going to. We have increased our footprint, our relevance around the world by about 5% compared to this time last year. Something that is, again, much bigger than necessarily anybody would have necessarily understood previously. So we'll pick up there at the receipts. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
The Mark Levin Show. This is the home of the July 4th Americans. And you can call at 877-381-3811.
They stand for open borders. The American people rejected it. They stand for rampant illegal immigration. They stand for criminal illegals coming into our country. They stand for the drug cartels having control of our southern borders. And last but not least, they stood for the inflation that crippled so many American families.
How quick we forget. That is Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, who's running to be the next governor of Florida as Governor Ron DeSantis term limited. And Byron is the Trump-endorsed candidate in Florida. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. I've been going through the receipts. President Trump laid out his 20-point plan to save America. Coming into this year, I laid out my expectations based upon that. During the first hour, we went through those expectations. We went through the 20-point plan. And since I've been delivering the receipts, what has actually been accomplished in the first 11 plus months under the Trump administration? And so we're going to continue with that here because it is remarkable. So much more has been accomplished than I think even the most ardent Trump supporter realizes. He can be a victim of his own success. You have presidents that would never accomplish in 4 years what he's already done in 11 plus months because the man never stops working. He works every day, including Christmas Day, just like we saw yesterday with the strikes that ended up taking out ISIS terrorists that had been persecuting Christians in Nigeria, just as he is tightening the noose around Maduro in Venezuela. So as we taking a look at the receipts here, just had finished talking about the preservation of the U.S. dollar. A lot of people take a look at the price of gold and silver and like, you know what? Got a lot of debt. Gold and silver, record levels. This can't be good. And look, the debt stuff is real. The debt stuff is concerning, but the rate of inflation has been coming down. If the rate of inflation was rising along with this, there's more reason for word concern. But also, what we've seen is that the U.S. dollar is 5% more relevant today than it was a year ago today, or actually January 20th for that matter, because more foreign governments are using the U.S. dollar as a reserve than had been previously. The U.S. is stronger. The U.S. dollar is stronger in that respect than it was on January 20th. I mentioned it's one of Trump's 20 points. If you've wanted to see Medicare and Social Security strengthened so that they're not soon insolvent, that this will be your year. Well, it's starting with DOGE. I mean, we tend to forget about DOGE and everything that was accomplished there, right? Well, starting with DOGE, continuing with the provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, you had a total of $9 billion annually and fraudulently issued Social Security benefits that was eliminated. You had $1 billion in annual administrative expenses that was eliminated. Enhanced security measures for accessing Social Security and Medicare that have been added. Medicare has had 324 arrests, basically one a day for fraud. You've had $14.6 billion in annual fraud that's been eliminated from the program. Additional savings of $12 billion annually that have been achieved through Trump's renegotiation of prescription drug prices. And there's more that needs to be done, obviously, because we do still have both that are facing insolvency next decade. But stopping the waste, fraud, and abuse, huge piece of the puzzle to start, right? So you've had meaningful progress there, tens of billions of dollars in annual savings in those programs that's already been achieved. Mentioned that if you've wanted an end to federal regulations that limit consumer choice, that drive up prices, that this is your year. Okay, so what's actually happened there? Did you know that the Trump administration has cut a total of 646 regulations that has reduced consumer expense by over $212 billion annually? What does that mean to you? Just through regulations, things that you would never see unless you're a producer that is nailed by these regulations, you are saving about $600 a year. The savings is about $600 per household annually for the regulations that Trump has gotten rid of. Oh, by the way, if you want reform in education, including the end of funding critical race theory, gender fluidity, like woke agendas through the U.S. Department of Education, that this would be your year, and mention that, hey, maybe even we get rid of the Department of Education. Well, so about that, what's happened? Well, no federal department has been cut as much as the U.S. Department of Education this year. Over 50% of its employees have been eliminated. Huge swaths of the department's responsibilities have been redirected. As you're taking a look at, hey, he signed an executive order to try to eliminate the Department of Education. We have made big strides in that direction. So you, for example, have K through 12 and post-secondary education oversight that's been sent from the Department of Education to the Department of Labor. You have the Indian education programs that have been reassigned to the Interior Department. Child care grants and accreditation, that's gone to Health and Human Services. International programs to the State Department. So what's been happening is, as over half of the department's employees are gonzo now, you've also had a lot of the responsibilities that the Department of Ed was tasked with that have been reassigned to other departments, paving the path to continue the process of elimination for the Department of Education. And pretty much Trump is doing everything he possibly can without an act of Congress that would actually just outright eliminate the department. Huge 11-month plus progress. Mentioned that if you want to end boys pretending to be girls playing in their sports, that this would be your year. Well, we touched on this one through the receipts earlier, but it's worth elaborating on. So on February 5th, President Trump signed the executive order keeping men out of women's sports that interpreted Title IX to require that women's sports categories are reserved exclusively for individuals assigned a female at birth, and to withdraw any federal funding from non-compliant educational institutions. Well, that's what triggered the NCAA response to where they said, yeah, we're not going to allow biological males to compete as women. Can't wake up one day and go, man, I feel like a woman. And so you go compete against them. Can't do that anymore. If you've wanted an end to anti-Semitism and related hate being tolerated on college campuses, this would be your year. Well, in January, President Trump signed the executive order, additional measures to combat anti-Semitism, and it directed agencies to prosecute, remove perpetrators, taking enforcement actions against non-compliant colleges and universities as well. So what's actually happened on this? Okay, so far this year, 60 colleges and universities that were non-compliant have been investigated, and over $400 million in funds have been withheld from those institutions. Mention that if you want greater federal election integrity measures, Trump would be on it this year. And we have seen action there. Signed the order preserving and protecting the integrity of American elections. The order eliminated Biden's order that created more lax voting standards in federal enforcement and mandates, among other things, documented proof of U.S. citizenship on mailed voter forms. It directs federal agencies like the Department of Homeland Security, Social Security Administration, State Department, to share databases with states for verifying citizenship and removing ineligible voters, and also conditioning federal election funds on state compliance with those measures. So if we don't see that states are removing ineligible voters, then federal government is going to withhold money for elections. It also includes updated voting system guidelines, including bans on certain types of systems to be used, equipment that is not considered secure by today's standards. Also, prohibiting non-citizens from administering federal elections and related materials. Kind of crazy that stuff was happening. Mentioned that if you wanted the United States to become more prosperous and successful than ever before, that this would be your year. Well, there's a lot to that entire ball of wax. But aside from the progress that I've already covered, consider this. President Trump has secured a total of $9.6 trillion in new U.S. investments since becoming president of the United States. Now, at some point you hear numbers, and it's like, oh, well, that's a big number. It's a trillion. What does that mean? What does that number actually mean? What does it represent? Consider this. What do you think the total foreign investment into the United States over the entire prior decade was? 2015 to 2024, how much total foreign investment into the United States took place? Have an idea? The answer was $2.2 trillion. Okay, so what I'm bringing to you is this, and it's not a mistake. What Trump has secured in just over 11 months is the equivalent of about 44 years worth of investments into the United States previously. In 11 months, he secured what previously would have taken the United States about 44 years to achieve. Nobody really... Trump will talk about it, but nobody really puts in this context, right? Kind of a big deal. And so, why did I walk through all this stuff? Why have I cited all of these things? It was all in Trump's 20-point plan for making America great again, for saving America. And it is clear that he's been dead set on making it a reality. Moreover, I mean, it's just clear that he has been working every single day, including yet again yesterday on Christmas Day, to make these things happen. It's hard for Donald Trump to be understated. His success this year has been understated, even among his supporters. Pretty incredible scorecard. All right, in New Jersey, where the weather is brutal about now, we have Sandra, who has been very patiently been waiting on the line. Sandra, you have my sympathies from South Florida on your weather right now. Welcome to the show.
I drove home tonight from Fort Lee to Edgewater. It wasn't so bad. Now it seems to have lightened up a bit. Maybe we'll be surprised tomorrow. Maybe we won't. I don't know.
Good deal. It sounds like you're a gamer.
I am. In fact, I was excited to ride in the snow. You know, a little excitement, never hurts anybody as long as you're careful and you don't get in an accident.
There you go.
Brian, tonight I was thinking about conservatism. As far back as I can remember, I was always proud to have conservative values. What's wrong with that? I mean, I looked it up and I found all these wonderful things that it means. It means self-control, accountability, integrity, progress matters with stability. I mean, progress matters, but stability matters too. And that's what we all try to show. And conservatism means appreciation for our country, the sacrifices that came before, and the freedoms that we now inherited. There's so many beautiful things behind that word conservatism. Balance, nothing excessive, responsibility, personal responsibility, respect for the family, community, appreciation, everything. I mean, why don't people see this, Brian?
So, Sandra, brilliant. Thank you. Best wishes on the continued success navigating your conditions there in Jersey. So a couple things about that. And I look at this, I'm a product of the 80s. I'm an Xer. And one of the other things I talked about going back many years now is a generational opportunity. And I perceived this Trump administration as being a generational opportunity. Have often made analogies between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, right? And, during the Carter years, you look at how bad things got and ultimately what came out of it. Well, we got Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was so successful. We had so much success in the 80s that it created a whole generation of conservatives. And today, the most conservative generation has been my generation, Gen X. And it's not a mistake. And I pointed out, and this was evidenced in the election cycle last November, not November as in last month, but in 24, you had more people under the age of 30 vote for Donald Trump on a percentage basis than had since Ronald Reagan won his second term. And so that also was not a mistake. I don't think that conservatism is necessarily as misunderstood as you think it is. I think these things are cyclical, but it takes a real leader to be able to demonstrate it. You had an absence of leadership on conservative values between Reagan and Trump. And had it not been for COVID, this would have happened quicker. But with all the success that Trump has had this year and the momentum we have heading into next year, if he continues to deliver on the agenda this way, I think you're going to see the youngest generation become the most conservative generation, just like the Xers previously. So I think there's a lot of room for optimism here. And I do not think that conservatism is dead. I think we're actually growing it faster than we have at any point since the 1980s. Brian Mudd in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
We've done what the American people have asked us to do, but the job isn't done. We've got a lot to do in 2026, and we're going to be laser focused on getting that job done.
No doubt. That's Tennessee Congressman David Kustoff on the Fox earlier today. And the receipts that I've delivered during the course of the show, I think even most Trump supporters be really surprised by the level of success that's happened here. Trump could be a victim of his own success at times, but we got 3 more years to go, and there's a lot of reason for optimism, I believe, despite a lot of the challenges that are right in front of us. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin, and Joel has been patiently waiting online. Joel happens to be where I just was, celebrating Christmas with my family in Naples, Florida. Joel, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian. Nice to talk to you. I kind of looked up your record. You started when you were 17 or 18, and that's pretty impressive, and you knew what you wanted to do in radio. But
yes, sir. Been blessed.
What I'd like to talk about, too, I love Naples. Naples is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a lot of cities that are being kind of consumed by Islam and Muslim immigrants, and it's not that anybody is hateful, but we're concerned because when they come in and they say they want to become Americans, they're not assimilating. They're trying to push their religion onto communities, especially Dearborn.
Yeah. You're exactly right, Joel.
Hamoud, and they play speakers. They try to change customs, and you got to look around the world and go Germany, Sweden.
You're exactly right, Joel, and we're coming up here near the end. So a couple things. Rules for radicals was the long game that the left has been playing. You have a 100-year plan that's been in place for the Islamists to take over the West. We're just over 50 years into the plan. Here's the good news. President Trump is aware of this, just like he was aware of rules for radicals. He's busy undoing what's been done that way, and we've got more success to come. Been a pleasure. Have a great weekend.